Yo, what up? You've heard how every superhero has their origin story, right? Well, welcome to the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am your host, Desi Abeda. I'm a high-performance mentor, registered dietitian, and family man. Tune in as we explore the high-performance habits of high performers, their origin story, and how they went from disbelief to belief in their own hero's journey, where they got to a point and shouted, "Can't believe I made it." Enjoy the episode. Oh my God. What is good, high performers and can't believers? Welcome to another episode and another season of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. We are at episode 101. I'm still in complete awe about what has happened during our break. I'm still in complete awe that we're even here. I mean, I had just came across a really great post from a content creator who is a podcast coach, and he was talking about the sheer volume of what happens for most people in the podcast industry. And he had talked about if you made it past episode 23, that you end up in the top 1% because most people end up quitting or they don't continue or whatever that is for them. They just don't do it anymore. And so to be able to say we're in season 7, to be able to say we're at episode 101, to be able to share what has gone on over our break, from illness, emergency room visit, to injury, to a mental breakdown, to finding myself, to a business opportunity that's going to take me around the world, to meet with other high-level people, to tap into their rituals, their habits, to be able to collaborate with them, to share with you. And on top of all of that, ushering in a new baby boy in the process. I'm just cloud fucking 9 right now. So welcome everyone. Welcome Pod Fam to another season of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am so grateful to be your podcast host up to this point, your high performance mentor, and someone who can be extremely real with you all, because I'm not going to lie to you. During our break, a lot of shit has happened. And as we kind of look back, I just kind of want you to be along for the ride. We're going to be talking about this as we kick off season 7 for the next 30 to 35 minutes. We'll take you through the craziness and some life updates, and on top of what to expect for season 7, right? So the last time that we spoke was episode 100, and we did it in a big way. You know, I even mentioned like, "Mama, we made it to episode 100," because I inherently felt that, because it was such a huge and a big thing mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It was all the things for me to get there. And your ongoing listenership, your support, all of that stuff, I think is just so amazing. So again, I'm so thankful for you all. So let's go ahead and rewind a little bit over the next 30 minutes and let's talk about what the fuck has happened. And I think it's a great way to kick off season 7. So strap in, let's get it. So this past time, episode 100, we dropped that. I had every intention of giving you a short pod with episode 101. And a lot of you actually had been texting, hitting me up like, "Yo, when's the next episode? You said you were going to drop it." I just needed a break. And this is why. All right, so let's rewind. So I dropped episode 100. I had every intention in dropping episode 101. Going back there, I was like, all right, let me go ahead and see, like, it's going to be a short pod for 101. Let's make sure that we stay true to the message. We are helping the high performer, the high level person in you to engage in the habits and rituals that get you to where you need to go. Looking back at that, like a week later, I ended up getting violently ill for about a week. And so to me, and my family, I mean, at that time, my wife is, I think, maybe 7-8 months pregnant. It's back in April, probably 6 months. You know, my math is bad. Yeah, it's 6 months. So probably like 6 months. And so we thought it was just the flu, right? We got tested. I was good. You know, there's an ongoing joke in our household that, like, we're like apparently Highlander, and then, you know, we've been blessed enough to not, you know, get COVID. You know, shout out to those who have been safe throughout this process and had it and are good. So I mean, that happened. and there was a lot of concern. So after about a week, I kind of came to and was feeling better, and I was like, all right, it's been about a week since I dropped the last pod. I'm just going to go ahead and take a small break. And my thought process behind it was, let me go ahead and take a little bit of time and just see like what are some things like I know like having a young child is gonna it's gonna change things at home. So in my head, I was like, all right, let me go ahead and try to map this out to see what I need to do. Fast forward 3 weeks later, like not even, same thing, right on the dot. Ended up getting violently ill. And it was like one of those illnesses where it was like 4 to 5 days. Like the first one was like fevers, can't really go to bed. I'm thinking to myself, like, what the hell is going on? This is the same thing. Spending 3 days with like a shit ton of nausea, vomiting. And it even got to a point where like I couldn't hold down fluids. And my concern as a dietitian, like I'm looking at all the signs. And one of the biggest things that I saw was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to get descriptive here. Color of my urine, like I've never seen it that dark. Like I am severely dehydrated. I ended up getting a mobile hydration unit over to my home to help me. And in the process, being in such an intense amount of pain too, really both times, but the second time that it happened, anytime that you have chest pain, you get concerned. And I'm 36 years old. And the one thing that I can think of, I was a young kid when this happened. One of my uncles was 39 and he ended up passing away because of heart failure. So my first thought is like, damn, like I thought I was taking care of myself. Like there's no way that this is a heart attack. What's going on in my body that this is happening. So I ended up going to an urgent care, got a heart, ended up going doing an ECG. Like I was good there. Like past that, it's like okay, cool. Like that's not what's happening. But what's up with this upper abdominal pain? And we didn't really know what was happening. So I ended up seeing my doctor, and we found out that one of the biggest things that happened was moderate non-alcoholic fatty liver. Okay. One of the biggest things that happened with that was, and this is kind of fast forwarding now, like even one of the, I'm not going to call them out because I think there's a lot that's happening right now, and there's a lot that I probably need to talk about on the legal side, if you will. I ended up short story short, ended up consuming a food product that ended up impacting like my whole bodily system. All right, there's a short story. Okay, so all that is happening. So that happens in April and in May, and during that time, I remember I was laying down, and my wife had just expressed some concern. She's like, "Are you okay?" That was honestly one of the first times that I sort of sat back and I was like, I know that I'm going through at the time a lot of stress. I know that I'm going through a lot of overwhelm with what the future is going to hold, and I'm going to kind of tap you into what was going on during that time because I talked about a little bit of a mental breakdown, right? So that happened in April and a little bit in May, and then it was almost sequential, like week after week after week. Like the first week, I ended up injuring my right shoulder, right? And so, second week in May, I ended up tweaking my right side back, the right side of my back, deadlifting of all things. And then beyond that, I ended up spraining my ankle on my right foot. So it was like all the right side. And my wife, being the very yoga esque granola beautiful person that she is, she was like, "Hey, there's something that's going on for you. Do you know what that is?" And at the time, I was like, like I don't like I'm adhering to all my routines. I have my morning routine. I have a nighttime routine. I'm meditating. Like I'm taking care of my body. I'm getting my steps in. I'm prioritizing nutrition. Like yeah, 100% I'm stressed, but like I mean, who isn't type of thing, right? And in a lot of those conversations, I started to see some of the concern on her face, and I started to start thinking about like, damn, my little boy is going to be coming here in the next. At the time, it was in May, so in the next month and a half, like, there's likely some things that I need to figure out for myself. And so I took towards the end of May about a week or two to actually come around and ask my wife, like, hey, we got a really cool business opportunity coming up that can be absolutely life changing. We have our little boy who's going to be coming, at the time, this was beginning of June, right? We have our little boy is going to be coming here in the next 30 days or so. I want to tell you that I'm feeling overwhelmed. I want to tell you that I'm struggling with all the transition that's about to happen in my life. And I tell you this story because I'm sure a lot of you can resonate with how hard change is from time to time and what that does to not only your mental well-being but also your habits and your rituals, okay? And it also helps you to understand how to get your needs met. So that's why I'm telling this story. All right, going back. My ADHD brain, here we go. Um, So yeah, so this is happening, and finally I got to a point where I was like, you know what? Like you asked me, she's been asking me at that point, for, what I needed for about 30 plus days. So I'm sitting there. All my doctor's appointments are done. We got some scans in. Like we have some of the information, but not all. So I'm just still at that point, not really sure what's going on in my body or what, or in my mind. So what I asked her was like, hey, I think I need about 48 hours just to myself. And I think for a lot of you as high level, high performing people and people who want to get there, you know the value of alone time if it's intentional, right? So I asked her for that and I had said, like, hey, you mind, thankfully, shout out to my mother in law. Thankfully, she doesn't live far. So I was like, hey, would you mind just going to stay there and just allowing me to have 48 hours to like try to see what I need? And what was extremely beneficial with that was a couple things. I lucked out because I actually have a really great friend who has a phenomenal setup. He has a cold plunge, he has a jacuzzi. He's someone that I really, really revere from the standpoint of just him going into his healing journey. He is a Latino. Like, there's a bunch of things that I really enjoy about this friend. Shout out to you, Ricky. And I had hit him up just randomly, and I was like, hey, this is where I'm at. I feel like I'm too busy to actually feel any feelings. Are you available to help me? Like, what I'd love to do is to sit down, to have a day, to journal, to take part in a cold plunge, to completely shock my body and mind into getting back into my body. And so I had this all mapped out, right? I went to a friend who does Reiki. So I started my day there and we did some tapping and we did some other things that were incredibly influential because what I got from that session was really cool because it's things that I kind of already knew, but to say them out loud and to actually feel the emotion because let's look, high performers, listen, um, as someone who is your mentor and considers myself an expert in what we're doing here, I just want to let you know I do this incorrectly a lot. I'm still very much human. And it's really hard for me to even say, like, hey, I was so busy that I had no idea what I needed. And so once I got to a point where I was like, okay, cool, I'm way too busy in order to check in with myself. Because we kind of know that, right? Whether or not we're parents, whether or not we're professionals, like you know that sometimes life just gets so busy and you get lost in it because if you stop to feel or to think, those feelings are uncomfortable. And what was even more influential there is like once, especially back in May, going to my doc, they're like, hey, we need to figure out a little bit more about what's going on. So, in order for us to do that, we need to make sure that you take part in some other rituals that are going to be beneficial for us to take a look. And you're going to come back in August and let us know how it's going. So, one of the things that my doc asked me to do is like, hey, for the next 3 months, no alcohol. And for me, from someone who like really enjoys socializing, from someone who has talked about the whole process of tapping into being sober curious and things like that, like this was like, okay, cool, like that. I wonder what this is going to be like. But one of the things that kind of punched me in the face prior to this was like, oh wow, like I had prior to this have been disconnecting using alcohol. Like it's just something that would happen, right? It's like I would be disconnecting. I'd be doing that, and I'd just be throwing on Hulu. Like, hey, I deserve this. Like, I'm rocking a podcast. I'm rocking a business. I'm doing all these things. Like, I deserve to disconnect. But in the process of doing that, I wasn't actually connecting with like how I was feeling with the new baby boy on the way, with the new business opportunity, with all of that. So going back to those that 48 hours, I went to my Reiki person. We ended up doing some tapping, and the thing that came up for me was I'm so afraid of messing up. And it's not so much like as a parent, but just as an individual, because I have put an immense amount of pressure on myself now raising a little boy because I'm still working through a lot of father wounds, and I feel like him being here, like I'm going to be able to do a lot of that healing. What was great about saying this out loud is like I'm so afraid of doing this imperfectly and messing up, and therefore having negative ramifications on my next of kin and my legacy beyond that. Like I'm just not I'm not tapping into that. And because I'm not using alcohol or TV or anything like that, like I actually have to feel these feelings. And so it was good to say that out loud. And so beyond that, what was really cool, because I had been for quite some time, right? I'd been doing this, and it's actually something that's been really helping my mental. I can't say enough great things about microdosing on psilocybin. Like it's just the science behind it is so interesting to me. So I had been doing that for quite some time. Now, fast forward to where we're at right now with those 48 hours. For anyone who's ever done a cold plunge, it's it's mind changing because the only thing that I could do, and you might think to yourself like, hey, like I know that's a big thing with most people, the Wim Hof breathing, all that stuff. Most people might kind of think that it's super trendy, but I thought it was super influential because what I ended up doing was some contrasting. So I did 2 minutes in the cold plunge, that's 34 degrees, and then I did uh, the jacuzzi for 4 minutes, and we did more or less, I want to say 4 to 6 of those cycles of just completely shocking my body because that's honestly what I wanted to do. And so being in 34 degrees for that 2 minutes, the only thing that I could do during that time was to connect with my breath. And listen, that's honestly something that I hadn't been doing prior to this time, whether I was in my head too busy to try to feel the feelings, like whatever that was. And what was really cool about that is connecting with my breath is it reminded me not only that my habits matter, but even more so that in order to feel the excitement of a new business opportunity, in order to feel the excitement of my new baby boy and seeing my daughter be able to be an older sibling, because I'm the oldest of five, like that's such a value system and such a big characteristic with who I am. Instead of feeling that excitement, like I was just numbing with being busy. And in that moment, it reminded me that not only that my habits matter, but also that I can connect with my breath when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed or if I'm starting to be too busy. And so, as I did that work, as I got out, as I did some journaling, as I had some good conversations, I spent time actually checking in with myself. And I think that's something that I want to remind you all to be doing as you're going through any sort of life transitions. Because if I look at it now, and this is also fast forward a month later, again, it's not a whole lot of time, but to me, it's a tremendous amount of time because what I got out of checking in with myself was so beneficial in my journaling, in some of my meditation, in completely shocking my body, in all of that work. The thing that I got back from that was, hey, you don't have to be perfect in this, but also understand that if time is not linear, all right, so here's all my quantum physics peeps right here. If time is not linear, your attitude, your habits, and your rituals are going to have ramifications for past versions of you, current and future. Right? And that might mean whatever it might mean for you all. But for me, what it meant is you can submit a new legacy here. And that is empowering. And so, in that process, and let me kind of bring you to the last 30 days and a lot of the life updates that I'm incredibly excited for. And so, that I've been really, really big on talking to high performing, high level people and getting their habits and rituals so that I can just share. And on top of that, not only in my one-to-one coaching or group programs, like one of the things that I'm helping a lot of our people to do is to tap into their energy in a way where they're showing up as their healthiest and highest selves into their creative endeavors. Because I think that we can all agree when we are feeling better, sleeping better, eating better, moving better, and feeling really, really great about who we are and our confidence, we're going to go chase that next thing and we're going to believe that we're going to be successful. And we're going to take care of ourselves enough to where when we do fail, and listen, if you got a lot at stake and you're putting yourself out there, you're going to have some failure. You're going to. I talked about that in episode 100. I talked about that in all of our episodes of some of my failures. Like that's going to happen. Right. So in that process, like of sharing this podcast, of doing a lot of things that I'm doing on social, I had someone knock on my door, right? And so what I did this past 30 days is I ended up taking a position with Red Bull. And the cool thing about that is I'm going to be working with a lot of their athletes and high level people of being able to tell their stories through not only the product, but being able to help them from the standpoint of telling others about their hero's journey on the product side. Okay. And the other thing that's going to help me to do is it's going to be a great deal of travel where I get to get out because I don't know. The last 2 years have been great. I can't say enough great things about them. But one of the things now, fast forward as I look at it, um, before the pandemic started, and I'm a huge Suns fan, and those who are going to see the video, like I'm wearing my son's hat, we will welcome KD whenever he's ready to come here. The Suns were hiring, and I ended up like starting the application, and then literally the next day the NBA shut down because of COVID, and that job posting got sent. And so in my head, and I didn't know this now, I didn't know this then, but I know this now. In my head, I was like, all right, at the time, I had like more or less 40 clients. And I was like, in my head, I was like, you know what? I know that there is a lot of change that's going to happen here. So let me go ahead and restructure the way that I work, the way that I work with people, the things that I'm offering, and let me go ahead and throw myself into helping high level people into high performance with their habits and their rituals. Which, to be honest, that process was really hard because that also meant in restructuring, there was some restructuring of finances too. But in my head, I was like, all right, I'm going to keep some space if this job comes back up, or maybe something cool in the future, or maybe just I need to be a dad. I ended up subconsciously restructuring everything that I was doing. And so when this opportunity came about, I was like, all right, this is going to take me around the world. It's going to take me in a place where I get to be connected with very high level, high performing people, and I get to increase my network. And so in the last 30 days, I did that, accepted that position. It's fantastic because they are very, very much into like the people that they work with being high level individuals who also have that entrepreneurship attitude where like they're in full support of us continuing doing what we're doing on the pod side, right? And also on the business side. What's really cool about that whole process is that's been happening over the last 90 days. And I wasn't even really tapping into the excitement around that. I was just too busy. And on top of that, like we had our baby boy coming into the world. And as I record this on July 1st to be released on July 1st, our boy Augustine, we're going to call him Augie, came into the world last Tuesday. And the last 7 or so days have been, yeah, like 7 to 9 days. They, they've been amazing. We're absolutely in love. Getting to see my daughter be an older sibling, getting to see her fall in love with a little person the same way that my wife and I are doing, getting to see my wife completely flourish in what she did. I mean, it really puts things in perspective. Like I'm over here talking about shocking my body and going into a cold plunge. I had this thought the other day, by the way. Men are crazy for this. The cold plunge is really, really big, especially in the like thought leadership space, which in a lot of ways there's some toxic masculinity stuff that I think part of my thought process behind it is like I'm gonna go ahead and be different, right? Uh, but they do a lot of talk about the cold plunge, and it's a thing that gets talked about a lot. After seeing my wife go through the labor process without medication, nothing like that, to see her tap into herself, I just it was 100% empowering. And to be able to be there with her during the labor process, during the birth, like I even got to catch my little guy. Like that was dope. And I'm very, very like I love science. And so like I was all up in there. And it was really cool to see that process, not only just of like how amazing my wife is, but like how amazing life is. And for anyone who's been able to witness that, for all my moms out there who have had children, like bless you, okay? But it was such a huge thing to be able to take part in the last 30 days and to be able to be present. And I could not have done that hadn't I spent the time to check in with myself. And so as I look forward with what I want to make sure that I get out of this opportunity is a commitment. A commitment to you all to not only just another 100 episodes, but a personal commitment to make sure that I am living the part. Okay. Before all of this, I would have liked to think that I was living the part. And also, I just need to throw some personal compassion and some empathy my own way and be okay with the idea that maybe I wasn't being incredibly truthful to myself with where I was at. And maybe what needs to happen is not only just some more support and accountability, but really just being okay with asking for help. And to you all as a pod family and pod listeners, like I want to say like, hey, thank you for those of you who were able to reach out. Thank you for those of you who were able to shower me with text messages and things like that about, Augie coming into the world. There's just so much that I have to be grateful for. And from the standpoint of being your podcast host and being someone who wants to continue to do life with you, like I'm just incredibly grateful for the opportunity to keep going. And so let's talk about what to expect in season 7. Like I said, I wanted to make sure this was short and quick with a little bit of life updates as we hit into our first episode this next week. Or this is our first episode, I guess, but heading into this next month. So here's what we're going to expect. So a little bit of changes. And I'm taking these changes in stride because I know that now that I have 2 kids in this house, I want to make sure that not only am I present through all of it, but I'm incredibly intentional. Right? Because I have some other projects and some things that I'm trying to restructure. And with change also comes a lot of intentionality. All right. So instead of us releasing 2 episodes per week, we're actually going to dial it back a little bit and remain intentional about the type of content that we're providing. Okay. And so the goal here is because I know I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of you like, hey, I love the Mentorship Monday episodes. They're short and quick and things that I can continue to work on. So we're going to go ahead and throw ourselves and continuing into that process. And so the plan right now, again, we're going to take this in stride together. Right? It's kind of like you all are going through a lot of the transition with me. Okay. Because I am going to be traveling. I'm going to be doing a lot of things, but I'm super excited about it. And the great thing about it is too is like everything that I'm doing here is mobile. So we might have some live episodes with others too, and that's what's also exciting as well. All right, so the plan right now is to make sure that we prioritize. So there's going to be an episode released every Monday, right? In the same way that we've been doing it. So we're going to have 2 Mentorship Monday episodes per month, right? We're going to take the Things That You Need to Hear series. We're going to change that into the Listen Up, right? And we're going to go ahead and make sure that we create acronyms for them. So the Listen Up is going to be LU and then the title. So we're going to listen up about something. So that's going to be short podcast. We're possibly going to have some old guests on doing some life updates. We're going to be breaking down TED Talks. We're going to be breaking down different audio. I ended up partnering with another company, Quester, where we're going to be taking some of their audio with like other people's speeches and breaking them down a little bit more. So that's going to be our Listen Up series. So there's going to likely be one of those every month. And then we're going to bring people on in the same way with their hero stories and their hero's journey and having those conversations, which those are going to be a little bit longer in the same way, right around 50 minutes to an hour. But the plan for me is to give you a variety of different episodes because I know a lot of you love the hero's journey stories. I know like you love those conversations. Some of you love the Mentorship Monday. Some of you even love the TEDx episodes that we've done. And so we're going to hold space for the variety of listeners that you all are and make sure that we're hitting those points, all while me honoring the season that I'm in right now as a very grateful dad of two very healthy children. Uh, Super grateful to my wife who is going through her own recovery process with just having birthed a child. Um, the new business opportunity that I have on top of restructuring things that I do from a podcast perspective. There's just a lot going on right now. And so this is kind of the season that I'm in. So for those of you who are expecting 2 episodes a week and love that, hey, you're still going to get the same type of content. But I think the way that I think about it too is it's really hard when you do this podcast game. Like you have to think about the marathon. You have to think about the long term. I'm not gonna lie to you because I want to get to a point where like this is a not only just a stream of revenue, but also this is an ongoing passion project that can continue to not only to impact lives, but continue to provide me with an opportunity to create some space for other opportunities. So I told you in I forgot which episode it was, but I told you like, hey, like if you're asking me if I've made it yet, what does it look like to make it? Like, listen, I want to step into film. Like I love that shit. I want to step into ongoing storytelling. And I feel like what's really cool about all of this process and what I want to continue to encourage you to do in your life as a high performer, as someone who can't believe that they also made it, is one, honoring your ideas and getting to a point where you're okay with failing and also getting to a point where you're okay with asking for help, not only for someone to hold you accountable, but for someone to help you to build systems so that you can do you can do that marathon that you need to do. Because not many people hit it with their first idea. It takes some ongoing work. Okay. And so I want to make sure that I am not only intentional about what I'm doing, but I'm very, very intentional about my value systems. And I can't do that unless I'm providing myself time to check in with myself. And I've been doing that on a daily basis. I we'll talk about this in some of our Mentorship Monday episodes, but I've been walking through a lot of my clients through flow states. And it's actually been kind of cool because it's created a new routine in me where I'm doing this almost every day. And it's so healing to be able to say like, hey, I have this idea, let me go ahead and take some time to flesh this out, let me take myself through a process of actually and tapping into a flow state. There's just so much that comes from it. You're going to get these Mentorship Monday episodes because I want to help you to break it down in the same way that I have with a lot of my clients, but the application as always is going to be on you. You're not going to have me breathing down your back. Shout out to my clients who allow me to do that, to nudge you, to make sure that you complete the series and tap into your flow. Because what I'm really trying to say to you is like, hey, you're worth all of the creativity that you have inside you. Let's honor your ideas by taking some action with them. Okay. So, that being said, I am super excited to continue in our podcast journey together. I'm invested in another 100 episodes. I'm excited for it. I'm sure with episode 200, I'm probably going to take a little bit of this audio so that we can talk about some of the all star episodes. I like to call them like clip shows. I'm a big fan of The Office. I'm a big fan of Seinfeld, Always Sunny. I always love when they do clip shows. I'm going to keep doing the same thing. And I'm going to keep being authentic to who I am. You know, it's an exciting time in our community. It's a really exciting time. And I am so grateful to be able to continue to empower you, to tell my story, to tell other stories, and to do some life with you. All right. So, all that being said, oh, update now. I'm super healthy. Things are going great. No injuries or health issues anymore. So thankfully that's gone. Um, I'm creating space to kind of be okay with the season that I'm in. So that's a great reminder for you to do the same because sometimes we just need some people, some loved ones, or even just ourselves, just a reminder to check in with ourselves because there's a lot going on in the world. I haven't even tapped into what's going on the human side, but we'll have some people in to talk about that. because I think we need to continue to have tough conversations so that we can solidify things that are empowering for us and systems that are going to help us be our healthiest and highest versions of ourselves. All right. So, welcome to season 7. I'm excited to do life with y'all. Catch you in the next one. Let's go.